As spectral mist shrouds the emerald moors of the English countryside, as the mystical fens release a gaseous cloud of mournful fog upon the rural landscape, a profound sense of trepidation slithers its way into our lives. The centuries gone by have given rise to a variety of folktales, featuring obscure entities who lurk beyond these unknown veils. But there's one otherworldly creature that dominates the very fables of which influence so many lives. Most often described as an immense black dog with fiery, luminous eyes, the Hellhounds are portrayed as servants of the devil, casting a wide influence of malevolence and bad omens on the unfortunate souls who catch a glimpse of one. Known under a variety of aliases, depending on the region of their sighting, Galley Trot, Hairy Jack, or Old Scarp, there is only one name universally recognized: the Black Shuck. A sinister and dangerous opponent to our very existence, they are often believed to roam the remains of medieval ruins, patrolling desolate dark roadways or prowling the long-lost grounds of ancient cemeteries. These beasts of lore strike an appalling dread over the very land they stalk. However, while tales of the Black Shuck predominantly hold sway in English and Celtic folktales, there are pockets around the globe where these Stygian canines are rumored to roam. One such locale was an unassuming town nestled deep within the mountainous embrace of North Carolina. In the Valley of the Cross, inhabitants would realize that the distant legends from far-off lands may be much closer than they would care to admit, and that monsters do indeed dwell among us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Moonlight Lore podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hopkins, and this is the Hellhound of Valle Crucis. Recognized by its Latin name, Valle Crucis, meaning Valley of the Cross, is a quaint and calming village cradled gently along the tranquil banks of the slow-flowing water of the Dutch Creek, of which gracefully merges into the border of the Watauga River. The town's name pays homage to its geographic setting where it rests, as three sun-sparkling streams converge together naturally, sculpting the shape of an archbishop's cross across the landscape. The town also exudes an aura of seclusion and solitude, as it finds itself nestled beneath the protective shadow of the Tester Mountain to the northeast, while the Valley Mountain stands in defiance to its sibling in the opposite direction. The sprawling giants stand as formidable sentinels, safeguarding the community's inhabitants from the rest of the world, establishing an almost lost utopia of natural, untouched wonder. Though the outward tranquility may seem to mask a deeper unrest, the serene and peaceful environment that would otherwise cast a charming influence over those who venture here may not appear to truly be what it presents itself as. In reality, shortly after the town's inception, a local legend took root, manifesting itself as an enigmatic obstacle that weighed heavily on the hearts of those who once found this idyllic valley their home. It was as if the very essence of nature had been tainted, corrupted into allowing unnatural phenomena to roam unchecked. The morning mist clung stubbornly into the day, swallowing the town and its occupants in an ever-persistent fog that carried an unsettling undertone. As night descended, the silence grew deafening, compelling those wary of the lurking mysteries within the nearby forests to seek refuge indoors, never daring to venture out once the moon began to crest the night sky. Soft whispers of what was suspected to wander on the outskirts of town began to slowly grow into a cacophony of concern. The villagers could all recognize the dangers that were afoot, but they could scarcely understand the identity of the threat. Rumors of this bizarre enigma slowly began to echo out beyond the confines of the mistful valley, warning any and all travelers that they took their lives into their own hands if they ever dared to wander the desolate roads alone. Farmers caught outside after dark, attempting to finish the day's workload, would, on occasion, catch a silver glimpse of an obsidian black beast darting through the woodland shadows, retreating from the harsh glare of the moonlight above. Children, in a rousing attempt to strike fear into their peers, would tempt one another in stepping from the safety of the clearings and into the maze of brambles said to conceal the monster. This nocturnal nemesis cultivated an aura of fear and trepidation within the deepest pits of the locals' hearts, a fearsome legend of a bloodthirsty predator who solidified itself into the very tapestry of the valley's history. However, its true identity continued to elude the inquisitive eyes of those searching for answers. What the beast was, no one could say, but the collective agreement was that this creature was beyond menacing, the remains of its nightly hunts a testament to its sheer power and ruthlessness. Animal carcasses began to sprout up more frequently, ever closing the sensitive gap between the wilderness and civilization. It wasn't a unique occurrence for a member of the petrified community to discover the remains of wild game posted on the outskirts of their village, a distinct warning of the beast's capabilities. As is human nature, our mounting curiosity often outweighs our sensibility. We're drawn to the unknown, relentlessly on a quest for answers. What the beast of Valle Crucis was, no one could say, which drove the wandering minds of the village folk into an endless spiral of suspicion. Could it have been that the creature who had enraptured them in such dismay was simply of explainable origin, a dreaded wolf or intrepid bear who had found a cornucopia of prey among the boundaries of human civilization, feasting to its heart's content? However, more imaginative minds concocted a narrative which fell into the realm of the supernatural, lending an air of credence to the creature's obscure and savage nature. Of those few who dared accuse this mysterious beast of otherworldly prowess, members of the St. John's Episcopal Church in Valle Crucis were among the first to suspect the beast was influenced by more than the simple whims of nature. Erected in the late summer of 1862 by two holy men, Bishop Atkinson and Brother Skiles, the charming one-room chapel flourished in the community stricken by fear. It became a sanctuary, a safe haven from the horror that hunted under the moonlight. The locals felt safe here, untouchable. The leaders of the church realized this. They saw an opportunity they took full advantage of to expand their flock. The religious leaders recognized the fear the public had for the nighttime interloper, which allowed them to influence the story to better suit their needs. There had yet to be an open attack against a member of the community, though most believed it was only a matter of time before the allure of human flesh became all too powerful for the creature to ignore. As the decaying remains of various animals littered the countryside, bathing the landscape in a murderous crimson, the looming consensus was that a human would likely soon fall victim next. The ever-creeping chaos that would eventually engulf the once tranquil valley was abrupt and swift. The warnings were all there. The rotting corpses of both wildlife and domesticated animals populated the ancient woodland as grim reminders of the predator's bloody perseverance. Death seemed to follow in its shadow, lingering on it as a dog follows its master. The uncanny interest it held for the isolated village and its occupants grew the longer it bound itself to the area, and as most had predicted, its prolonged stay resulted in the nauseating deaths of some of their own. As mentioned, those few who had taken it upon themselves to brave the hazards of the outdoors whether it be traveling the desolate roadways alone or tending to strenuous chores after nightfall, were met with the end of their luck as disappearance after disappearance began to sprout across the locality. Some were found, bloody, mangled, torn to shreds. Others, however, were far less fortunate, their bodies and souls forever cursed to remain lost for all of time. The local minister of St. John's Church knew this was the work of pure evil. A demon, or perhaps a devil, had taken members of his flock, and thus truly birthed the legend of the Hellhound of Valle Crucis. There had been an inkling that the beast was canine in its natural form, but as sorrow and dread was cast over the town as a result of the murders it inflicted, more folks began to truly understand the severity of their situation. But what could they do? It was never seen in the open, only ever camouflaging itself within the darkened brambles of the woods. As the twilight hours hit, only then would sharp-sighted individuals witness its hulking figure stalking them at a distance. A myriad of skilled hunters and experienced trappers would be lost for days, attempting to track the beast, only to ever return with fear in their eyes and dashed hopes in their hearts. How does one vanquish a beast so elusive that it could never be snared? Religious leaders in Valle Crucis were adamant the beast was of unnatural origins, suspecting it was a servant of the devil himself. They heavily hinted that the only defense one might have against an agent of Satan was to seek refuge as a member of the church. In doing so, one could expect their unwavering faith to shield them from the evil that lurked beyond their borders. Failure in catching or slaying such a beast, allowing it to prowl without rival, enforced the narrative that this creature was no mere dog or wolf, but rather an abomination sent from hell to forever grip the waning community. As fear began to surpass the limits of the stone-hearted locals, their fate was sealed as followers to the St. John's Church of Valle Crucis. The legend of the demon dog that haunted the town persists to this very day. However, this is not where our story ends. Over 160 years would pass since those fateful recordings of the Hellhound were first brought into existence, and the legend is just as alive today as it was all those decades ago. The locals truly believed their faith would keep them safe, and perhaps it had for some time. But as people grew older and generations began to wane, memories of the dreaded beast that once terrorized the secluded village began to slowly disappear. Contemporary times would, however, conspire to ensure the legend of the beast would forever remain as a blight among the very land it was rumored to roam. Among the handful of alarming tales regarding the Hellhound of Valle Crucis, one story surpasses the majority after a relatively recent sighting left a lasting impression on the area and revitalized the legend itself into our modern era. The exact date of the encounter is lost to the darkened halls of history, and the location leaves much to be desired. Many accounts attest there lies an old forgotten cemetery somewhere along the 194 highway that runs through Valle Crucis and snakes its way among the towering pines and cascading mountains. Neighboring the protruding headstones is a crumbling stone church, one that has failed to see a single living soul enter its hallowed sanctuary for eons. Yet this eerily silent setting would serve as the backdrop for the Hellhound's most infamous encounter. A midnight moon gracefully drifted across the celestial expanse overhead as two luminescent headlights bounded around the winding curves of Highway 194. While the white glow of the natural satellite bathed the valley in a comforting hue, a faint fog began to descend onto the travelers, obscuring their Stygian environment from their straining eyes. An early autumn breeze softly ripped the dying leaves from their branches, a wisping hand tossing them into the open air, cascading down onto the road ahead, an imminent warning of cooler weather. Their journey had lacked any excitement thus far, which resulted in a mixture of weary eyes and empty minds, the perfect concoction for an unremarkable adventure. Yet, as they crested a rolling hill leading them towards the abandoned stone churchyard and the adjacent field of tombstones, an obsidian figure darted from the sudden flash of their headlights, seeking refuge behind one of the many stone monuments. It was enough to beckon the attention of the travelers, drawing their half-open eyes to focus on something other than the monotonous path they drove. It looked as if a shadow itself had come alive, now fleeing and darting away from the deadly light that would banish it. Though, as they drew closer, the occupants realized this was no mere shadow they were witnessing, but rather the black, bristled fur of an ethereal four-legged beast. Pulling their vehicle to the side of the road to gain a clearer view of this moonlit predator, the two men sat astonished as their eyes attempted to pierce through the darkness, only to be met by two fearsome, fiery orbs staring back at them. No doubt these were the hungry eyes of this otherworldly monster who stalked in the shadows. From its obscure realm, it appeared dog-like in appearance, but lacked the proper proportions of any such common canine. Its bared yellow teeth ripped through the darkness, an unnerving equal to its flaming eyes. It towered over the headstones, raising itself to challenge the size of the car itself. The two men sat precariously behind the diluted safety of their glass window, both stunned into a silence at what they were seeing creep towards them. As each massive paw stretched past the other, as each exhale released a thick, ghastly cloud of condensation into the air, and as its whole body motioned towards the frightened men, only then did they realize this beast held a nefarious intention within it. The abhorrent drool seeping from its gaping maw gave a clear sign this creature was starving and had chosen the pair as its next meal. The wave of realization that was cast over them pressured the driver to release the brake, compelling the machine to retreat from the scene and down the roadway. They both turned to one another, asking with a silent stare if what they had witnessed was real. Could the stories have been true? That the legendary Hellhound still prowls the untamed wilderness beyond the borders of Valle Crucis? Without a single spoken word, they both came to the same shocking conclusion. Just then, however, a passing glance at the mirrors sent their hearts plummeting. Behind them, the crimson glowing eyes of the beast tore through the blackened expanse, following and gaining ground. With a heavier foot spurring the car into action, the pair watched in astonishment as the speedometer raised from 50 to 60, then to 70 miles per hour and climbing, all while the Hellhound closed the gap, despite the increase in speed. It came so close its monstrous jaws were mere inches away from grasping the back bumper. For a single panicked moment, the two men thought to themselves that they were done for, that the Hellhound had caught them and would surely rip apart and devour their bodies without hesitation. However, just as the inexplicable situation had suddenly spiraled out of control, it ceased. Dumbfounded, the two men peered at their back window where only moments before the monstrosity had occupied, but now there was nothing but an empty black void. Whatever that creature had been, it had vanished into the darkness without a trace, leaving behind only the oppressive feeling of stark confusion and trepidation. Why had it so abruptly abandoned its cravings? The obvious intention in its eyes told of its unwavering hunger and determination in satiating it. So why had it allowed the two men to escape? Was it bound to the locality of the old forgotten church and its sundry of gravestones, preventing it from catching its prey who inadvertently crossed the boundary to safety? In the end, the men could only speculate of the unnerving nature of the creature they had encountered. The memory of those piercing, glowing eyes and relentless pursuit was now seared into their dreams forever. Perhaps this tale might serve as a reminder for others that some lingering legends are better left in the shadows. Valle Crucis has long been a location of profound fascination, largely due to the enduring legend of its bloodthirsty sentinel. Since its enigmatic arrival to the area, the infamy it garnered provided a distinctive opportunity, a means to draw attention to an otherwise unremarkable village that may have gone unnoticed by most. The very fact this episode revolves around the town is a testament to the demon dog's notoriety. And yet, we must always ask ourselves, could there be an inkling of truth within the legend? While it's undeniably a mystifying and chilling tale, is there any of it that could be considered rooted in reality? It's worth considering whether the early settlers of Valle Crucis might have envisioned such a formidable adversary. It's plausible that some encountered an exceptionally large wolf, inadvertently contributing to the embellishment of the tale we know today. Given that North Carolina is globally recognized for hosting the only confirmed population of wild red wolves, sporadic sightings over the years may have played a role in amplifying the narrative to a larger degree. Moreover, the presence of common black bears could easily account for reports of large dark figures seen prowling under the moonlight. Both wolves and bears would be no strangers to the natural order of the wild, which may potentially explain the remains of various wild and domesticated animals. This, in turn, leaves room to question whether attributing such heinous acts solely to a hellhound might be somewhat of an exaggeration. We must also consider the narrative's heavy emphasis on the early founders of St. John's Episcopal Church, who, as per the legend, purportedly promoted the tale to gather followers. It's perfectly conceivable that their actions would have effectively convinced the small community that their safety hinged on their unwavering faith in God. It's a plausible theory, at least to me, that this could have been a tactic to encourage locals to join the congregation. Whether the religious leaders themselves ever really encountered the Hellhound or witnessed the aftermath of its blood frenzy against the population of Valle Crucis is up for debate. Likely, what the case may be is that the legend itself did not truly take shape until long after the church was already established and the town grew past its infancy. The Hellhound of Valle Crucis might have been a particularly bold wolf in search of prey at the time, and as the years passed, embellishments may have been woven into the fabric of the legend we recognize today. Of course, though, this is purely speculation on my part. Personally, I find it hard to believe that a malevolent hound had taken up residence near Valle Crucis in the late 1800s. There's no concrete evidence or historical records to support the existence of such a creature in the area, aside from occasional encounters with typical wildlife like bears or wolves. Notably, the legend greatly lacks any specific names of individuals who allegedly witnessed this monstrous being, despite the narrative claiming there were numerous alarming incidents. Even the account of the two men traveling down Highway 194 late at night leaves much to be desired in substantial proof. The oldest church in the region also fails to yield any substantial results aside from St. John's. Any sort of crumbling cobblestone chapel along the highway is notably lacking. Additionally, this story lacks crucial details such as names, precise locations, and dates, all of which are integral in making the story believable. This leads me to question whether this portion of the legend is a genuine part of it, or if it was added later on by a creative writer attempting to embellish the Hellhound's legacy. In my humble opinion, this legend has so few facts surrounding it, it cannot be considered rooted in reality. Much like many similar stories, every online source seems to echo the same rhetoric, some even appearing to be direct copies of one another, with none providing any credible sources that could lend credence to the story's authenticity. While it is an enthralling tale with all the elements of a compelling narrative, it falters in presenting itself as historically accurate. Based on the information I've gathered in my research, I am inclined to believe there is very little happening in the modest, unassuming village of Valle Crucis. I do hope you enjoyed this episode, as quite honestly, it was a tad bit short and difficult to write as there's truly such little information I was able to dig up about it. I went through a few of my books trying to find any mention about this alleged hellhound and came up dry every time, and like I said, any online source leaves much to be desired. I absolutely love reading and hearing stories of hellhounds like this one, which made this episode one that I felt I wanted to pursue, despite the difficulties in writing it and lack of information to research. Regardless of the conclusion though, I do hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I did sharing it. And if you did, perhaps you may feel inclined to leave the podcast a 5-star review. Not everyone necessarily does it, but it does only take a second to do and does go a long way in helping the show grow. Also, if you wanted to share this episode or any others on the Moonlight Lore podcast, please do so, as spreading the word by word of mouth or on social media honestly is the best way to bring in new listeners. And finally, the absolute best way you can help out the show is by donating to the Patreon, where you will also gain access to a small catalog of unheard episodes. The most recent one being about Bell Island, Canada's, and quite boldly claimed by the Bell Island Tourist Board, North America's most haunted island. It's a great episode that I really loved writing about, and it's just chock full of paranormal hauntings that are perfect to listen to this Halloween season, so please consider checking that out. I think in the last episode I had promised I would come up with some news, and I'm happy to announce that I'm working on some merch for the show. I'm not exactly sure when that stuff will be available just yet, because I do want to order some samples to ensure the quality is good enough to sell. But keep an eye on Instagram or on the feed, I guess, because I will likely make a post regarding the launch of that fairly soon. If not, then maybe at the end of the month. Honestly, I'm not quite sure since I'm doing it all myself and I've never done anything like this before. So it'll definitely be an interesting endeavor. Other than that, I don't believe there is anything else I need to mention at the moment. So as always, I hope you're all having a wonderful spooky season. And until next episode, stay safe, keep being your awesome selves, and have a great time this October. I'll hopefully see you all again on Halloween. Take care.